for joining us this evening for University, and joining us today is Professor Barbara Sniffen. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, why don't we start things off by you telling us a little bit about your background, where you got your higher education, and some of your early teaching experiences.
All right. I grew up in Montana, Wolf Point, Montana. I attended the University of Montana for my undergraduate degree. I started my teaching in a one-room country school where the schoolhouse fence was the Canadian border. There are not too many people my age that have stories like that. But then I went to Missoula County High School, where I taught for a number of years. I love teaching. I always have loved it at every level. I was able to go to the Netherlands one year as an exchange teacher in Rotterdam. And then when I came back, I decided I'd go to graduate school. So I went to Tulane University in New Orleans, where I got both my master's and doctorate. And since I had lived in the Netherlands and knew some Dutch, I was directed into doing some work in Dutch history, which I found very interesting. So I did my dissertation on the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands. And I was able to go and spend another year in Holland and in Amsterdam this time, where I did research at the State Institute for War Documents. So, and then, while I was in Holland, I got an offer to come to Oshkosh. So I came here sight unseen. They didn't see me, and I didn't see them. And I've been here ever since.
Great. How about, you're into women's studies. It's an important part of your teaching. Right. Why do you feel it's an important course of study for not necessarily just women, but both genders?
Well, I think from the point of view of history first, women are half the population. And until the 1970s, women were pretty much left out of history. There were, of course, occasional women historians and other historians who incorporated women or who wrote biographies of important women, but to just sort of automatically include women in the curriculum or in the course of study was almost unheard of. And if you think about that fact, you can see immediately that women's studies is important. I mean, leaving out half the population.
Professor Sniffen, can you give us your definition of what a feminist is?
Well, I always ask that question to my classes and to audiences if I give a talk. And I'll say, how many of you are feminists? A couple timid hands go up, and then I say, well, what is the well, one thing I say is, aren't you American? And my students particularly look in astonishment at me. And I say, what's the definition? And then I give it to them, the dictionary definition, one who believes in the political, social, economic, and intellectual equality of men and women. Oh, yeah, I guess I'm a feminist. But I would also add that in my opinion, a feminist is one who works toward those goals, political, economic, social, and economic, and equality of men and women. Not just believes in it, but tries to do something about it. So that's kind of my working definition.
Now, do you consider yourself a feminist by that
definition?
Oh,
definitely, yes.
Okay, okay. Now, you were the head of the director of the Women's Studies program here at UW Oshkosh for about 10 years, I believe.
That's correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences with that?
Well, I got into women's studies sort of by accident. The job was open, and I was among the faculty that have been laid off here in 1974, tenured faculty. My husband was employed here in the art department, and I was not going to move, so I stayed here, and it was a part-time job that was available. So when I got into it, I didn't know a lot about what had been done. And UW Oshkosh had one of the first women's studies programs in the country in 1974. So we were groundbreakers. I wasn't the first director. The first director was, I believe, Bonnie Mahadeva, followed by Virginia Cox, and then me. I was, in the course of those 10 years, moved all around the campus. I had an office in Dempsey for a while, and then I was in the library for a while, and back in Dempsey again, and under the aegis of the interdisciplinary program for a while, and then the interdisciplinary program sort of disappeared, and women's studies goes on. Experiences, well, the program was always underfunded. You had to depend on the departments to offer courses. The program still does depend on departments to offer courses. It has no faculty. Or now we have one director as faculty, but the rest of the faculty, the instructors come from departments. So the problem was to go around and convince departments to offer women's studies courses. They had their own constraints because they had a basic curriculum that they had to offer. So it was really an uphill battle to get a unified program. And I had a lot of interesting experiences being director. As director, I was asked to speak around town. And I remember one occasion when one of these noon business clubs, Kiwanis or Optimus or one of those, I don't remember exactly, invited me to speak on the women's liberation, I think, women's lib, as they said, wanted me to come and talk. So I went down there. I didn't, you just have a few minutes to talk at these noon meetings, so I didn't write out a speech or anything, but I had a little outline of things I was going to say. Well, I barely got the first words out of my mouth when hands started going up. Belligerent questions coming from the audience. Now, you know, there's a list, and you have to take women first, and no, blacks first, and then women, and other minorities, and way down at the bottom are white males. I had a very hard time trying to convince them that there was no such list. And look around you. Do you see black people or women occupying all the positions? Of course not. There's a slight improvement since I came here in 1965, but we're not overwhelmed with women or minorities.
And you have a future too coming up here. You are going into retirement.
Right.
Any big plans?
Well, I have a list of things that I want to do that is in my head. I have to write it down one of these days and start to establish some priorities because I don't know what what I most want to do. One of the possibilities is writing a history of my years at Oshkosh. Our history of Oshkosh is seen through my eyes. And I certainly do have war stories, some of which I can't tell over public TV, but it's a fascinating story of what happened here, and it's the world in microcosm. We have the people who participate on one side and the people who participate on the other side, and then you have the bystanders, which is always true in history, and so it would be an interesting project to write up those stories.
It was a pleasure having you here. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome.
Thank you.